Doug, well, we appreciate you joining us today. I read your book, and after reading your book, I realized that my company, Nova Shield International, that we were in trouble. We're a prime contractor, and the DoD hasn't really been pushing us towards CMMC yet, but we know it's coming, and we want to make sure that we're proactive and we're bringing in an expert like yourself to help guide us through the process. We understand scoping is going to be very important after reading your chapter on the pre-assessment phase. And so what we brought you in for. I'd like to introduce to our team, Cody Stokes, Makia, and also Elvis Moreland. They'll be the stakeholders that will be here to help answer questions as you guide us through the scoping exercise. So welcome, Doug.
Thank you very much. And thanks for inviting me in and, pre-reading and understanding the requirements and that you need some help from the outside before just jumping into the assessment is a great first start. So we're pleased to help you out with that.
Fantastic. So we'll let you take over from here.
All right. So I'm sharing up on the screen just a list of potential assets, right? So it's all going to be about where does your sensitive information lie? Now, I'm just going to say sensitive information, or we can start using acronyms like CUI, but you have data that either you produce and it becomes CUI or sensitive information, or that the government provides to you. And they've already labeled it as such. So we're going to start talking about where is that information produced or where does it come in? We'll also talk about where it's stored, where it gets transmitted, and where it goes out. And that doesn't matter if it's on a laptop, on a phone, on a piece of paper, in a safe. All of those kind of things is what we want to cover. So I'll leave that up for a bit. And it's really just to make sure that we understand the potential extent to where this is, because it's kind of natural to come into this and just say, oh, it's on my laptop. I'm like, yes, and. So this is the and part.
Okay.
I think I would like to leave it to Nova Shield to take a look at this, and let's just walk down those different areas, starting with system components. I have your several page brief where you gave us some information about ESPs and other things like that, external service providers. But I would like to walk through here and see what else do we want to add that we know is in scope. So let's just start with endpoints. You mentioned company issued laptops. You also mentioned Nova Shield employees are on government furnished laptops.
Yes.
I would like to just make a statement that if your employee goes to the military base, sits on their laptops in their systems, that's out of scope. That's their business.
It's good to know.
Yeah. If they bring their own laptop into there, if they're allowed to, and bring it back out and connect to their systems, it's both, but we'll just worry about, hey, what's on your laptop? You've stated that your company issued laptops have sensitive information on it. So we'll start with that. Those are in scope.
Feeling overwhelmed by the complex world of CMMC compliance? You're not alone. Small to mid-sized defense contractors are often swamped by the massive list of requirements, unsure of where to begin, lacking resources, and fearing assessment failure. But there's a solution. CMMC Proof, your compliance acceleration system. Unlike typical GRC tools, CMMC Proof breaks down the process into 5 easy-to-follow phases, guiding you through each step of your compliance journey. With everything you need in one place, from CMMC Level 1 and 2 requirements to evidence tracking and more, you'll never feel lost again. Get CMMC compliant faster and easier than ever before. Our system ensures nothing is missed, saving you time and effort. Built by CMMC certified assessors with decades of experience, CMMC Proof delivers real-world expertise and guidance you can trust. By the time your assessment comes, you won't just be ready, you'll be confident. Visit CMMCproof.com to start your 7-day free trial and accelerate your CMMC compliance today.
Our employees are issued smartphones as well, so they do access work email on their smartphones.
Yeah.
Some of our employees do have tablets where those tablets have access to the company email. Some of our cloud services that are in Microsoft 365. I have a printer at my home where I do sometimes print off what I deem as federal contract information, but potentially it could be CUI as well. I already mentioned the cloud services we're using. Oh, and I'll stop there.
Yeah, so let's talk about the phones. You've got company issued phones, but you also have some employees who bring their own phone. You also stated in your document that they access email, they access communications. Is it fair to assume that those BYOD phones and the company issued phones both have sensitive information on them?
Yes, that's fair.
So we'll put those both in scope.
Okay.
It may, what we're going to do here is we're going to put everything in scope that could potentially have the sensitive information. If we don't think some of those things can be secured properly to pass an audit, we might want to take them out of scope. But right now,
Okay.
we're just trying to see what's in scope.
Uh,
BYOD phones and company issued phones, they're in.
Got it. I mentioned my printer. So sometimes I do print out some of the contract information.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's see. At the moment, to my understanding, our MSP is not blocking printing from the laptops. So potentially other employees have the option to add a printer and print.
Okay. So I'm gonna put a placeholder on talking about where employees work. Like if they work from home, if they work from a coffee shop, if you have some remote offices, we'll talk about that when we get down to physical location. But
Okay.
for now, exactly right. We'll hit the printers.
Okay. Now I'll hand it over to Cody and see if he has any other system components that I may have left out. Comes to mind.
Well, we do have the ITARs from our company profile that we're dealing with. As far as endpoints, only company resources are allowed to access that ITAR environment, the GCC High environment that we have. So no BYOD.
Okay, so the ITAR environment, I don't get a lot from I think what's here now. Can we talk about what that environment looks like?
As far as I'm aware, that is set up to be a GCC High environment with very restricted access to specific people that have business dealing with the ITAR reporting and such like that. And they can only access that from company owned.
Okay, will CUI information be there as well as the ITAR restricted?
That's the assumption, is that
Okay.
we would treat it with the same sensitivity as the ITAR restrictions.
Okay. And has that gone through any kind of assessment or reviews for being an ITAR environment?
Nothing beyond self-assessment.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. And that environment you said was GCC High, I think you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's the Microsoft environment?
Yes, that's Microsoft.
Okay, excellent. We also have a couple other environments while we're on it. I think you mentioned at least 2 external service providers, one that's managing mobile device management and one that's managing a couple of things for you. Can we talk about each of those? Let's give them names. Who are they?
Our MSP is Tech Solutions. They're based out of Maryland. And since we are a fully remote company, they're managing our GCC High environment and then also our commercial Microsoft 365 environment remotely. They are IT admin. We fully outsourced our IT to them.
Okay. And that GCC High is the same as the ITAR, or do we have 2 different GCC High environments?
Yeah, we just have one GCC High environment, and that's what we're using as our essentially CUI enclave, which includes ITAR, export control information that we are anticipating or may already have. And then our Microsoft commercial environment is separately, but it's managed by the same MSP. And actually, Cody represents that MSP. So
Okay, great. And who is the MSP doing the MDM solution?
that you answer the MSP questions, Cody.
That's the same MSP. We do have mobile device management components associated with the as a separate department from our cloud service provision department that's managing the GCC and the commercial cloud. And that is help desk support as well as running the RMM tool that manages the configuration support and setup for the endpoints.
Okay, great. As far as environments, do you have any offices that people go to?
Yes.
Okay. How many are we talking about?
Our help desk, obviously, we manage multiple different companies. Our technical support is managed through a call center on a floor of the same building that our mobile device management team works out of, but there are different subnets, different floors, logically and physically separated that way with different access controls in that regard.
Okay. Sorry, I was asking more along the lines of Nova Shield.
Yes, I'll have Nakia answer that question. She heads up our HR.
Do the workers report somewhere? Is there an office for them to go to?
We have some employees that are working remotely, but we do have one office that a few of our employees do come in. Our HR come into the office. Most of our employees are actually remote workers.
Okay. So the remote workers, are they restricted to working at home in an environment where they can control the router and the wireless, or do they work on the road? They work in coffee shops or in the airport?
We haven't put any restrictions on them. So we do have some employees that may work at co-working places. Like we have a site, one of our employees, she has an office that she goes in and co-works there in a co-location. So we don't have any restrictions at this point to where they have to be.
Okay. Do you have any VPN software or anything else to secure where they're at? Like if they're in the cyber center?
Yes, if they're logging into our GCC High environment or even our Microsoft 365 environment, we do require VPN access, and that's managed by our MSP.
Okay. I think one of the issues that we're going to want to talk about is when that laptop is not connected to GCC High, you're probably saving most of your sensitive data in OneDrive, but it is possible it can be on the laptop. Do you have any kind of restrictions about can that stuff be stored on your laptop?
We do not have restrictions on downloading or storing on the laptop, but we have employed validated encryption on the hard drives to support that capability to store locally, given that one of the biggest issues for Nova Shield is flexibility and availability in multiple locations. We want them to be able to download and store that data when they're going on site and be able to work from that and then upload later when they're maybe in a more secure environment or have credentialed access to the VPN. Or so we do have those encryption mechanisms in place on the hard drive.
So it's full disk encrypted, but which is unlocked when they log in?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just going to kind of poke around the envelope, I call it. Like, we may want to change some business processes, but we certainly need to look at them. The issue that I worry about is sensitive information being downloaded onto the laptop opening up in a airport or a coffee shop or even at home and being exposed, because at that point you're not on VPN and your hard disk is unencrypted because you're logged in. So a couple solutions: they could be individually encrypted files. You could restrict those files from being on the laptop ever. They always have to be in the cloud, or you're restricted to where you open up that laptop. You must be at home and routers that you control, or you're always using a secure VPN. We can look at those kinds of issues.
Doug, it sounds like you're suggesting a combination of both administrative and technical controls.
Yeah. And right now we don't want to do too many tasks at once. All we're trying to do right now is what's in scope. Those laptops are in scope, and there is an issue of exposure that we will want to address.
Okay.
Doug, I have a question on that. Something I read about the new rule that came out December 16th around if you institute a virtual instance, that endpoint falls out of scope. If I were to, as the MSP, provision a virtual desktop environment that gets accessed by that endpoint, would that then negate the need for the individual file encryptions or anything like that? Would it take those laptops out of scope if we were to set up a VDI environment?
It would. If we set up a VDI in the proper way, it would take those out of scope. It will limit what you can do business-wise. You won't be able to copy and paste stuff from that. You won't be able to take that stuff down and send it in your email. You could probably do it within that instance, but there's no reason that VDI instance can't have access to your GCC High environment.
Okay.
So we'll put that as a kind of a placeholder, as like discuss VDI as a potential solution.
Okay. Doug, our CISO just walked in, Elvis Moreland. He'll be able to also answer security related questions.
Awesome.
Welcome, Elvis. Glad you're able to make it. I know it's a lot of traffic and snow out there.
Yes. Thanks, Doug, for showing up and helping us out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Glad to be here. Let's get to work and talk about what we can do for you guys. All right. So the office itself, what kind of connectivity does it have to the internet? What kind of subnets have you set up? What kind of guest wireless? Tell me about the infrastructure.
So we have a small local area network, ISP services, 1 gig services to our smaller footprint office, where we do have some administrative personnel like HR and Derek are our executives. So it's a smaller self-contained network. Is there any particular question about encryption, or what else would you like to know?
Sure. Let's talk about the internet service. Starting off, just one service provider, no duals, no redundancy, and then it comes into a firewall, or is it coming into a load balancer?
It comes directly into the firewall. A straight standard business service. Our ISP is going to give us 1 gig service. It's really kind of straightforward.
Okay.
No load balancer.
And the firewall sets up a single LAN, or are there several LANs? Are there VLANs? Is there any segmentation?
Yes, there are segmentation. There are several LANs that we can use. Obviously, we do have the ability for guests to use a guest network, to get out to the internet, and that's only used, on an occasional basis. But our normal network is segmented for the tech staff and for the administrative staff. So we have two major networks.
Does the admin staff and the tech staff both have access to sensitive data? Or at least CUI? I'm sure admin staff has things like salary and other things that are sensitive, but CUI?
No, they do not. There has to be a justification to allow access to the other network.
Okay.
And that's typically not, you're not going to see an admin person, or HR is not going to be looking at the technical specs.
Okay, excellent. Any application servers, file servers, or other devices on the network?
We do have some local application servers and print servers within the office to handle the printing, but really everything that can be put in the cloud has been put in our clouds.
Okay. Any security components, IDS, SIEM, identity management, and we should probably talk about Active Directory as well. Any of those things local on-prem?
There's some IDS capabilities, but the Active Directory we're using, obviously, Azure Active Directory. The only local capabilities for security components would be IDS and then antivirus.
Okay. And you said the Active Directory is local?
Active Directory is in the cloud, Azure.
Cool.
Yep. Cody, do you want to elaborate on any other security protection assets?
As the MSP, we through the RMM tool and other endpoint detection and monitoring tools that we have as a part of that program, we're using the Microsoft Defender that comes with the Microsoft products that they have through our service, and that's the extent of that piece.
So local agents on the laptops are sending logs to you?
Yes.
In terms of service components, that's typically what I cover. Thanks, Derek, for bringing up tablets. That was something I wanted to add. What about moving on to external services? We've talked about the MSP that does a lot of things. MDM, 365 manages the GCC High, tech support, call center, and some IDS as well. Any other areas in which you use a service provider? And if you have a question on whether or not you think sensitive data goes there, like we have a website, but it's just brochureware. We don't put anything on there. Let's talk about it anyway and call it out of scope if we can. So start with web hosting providers. Do you guys have a website, and what's the functionality and what gets stored there?
Sure, I'll take that.
I'm gonna go ahead and share the whole screen just to show you. When I'm doing this interview, I've got a couple things open here. I've got your document, I've got this illustration, and I've got this PowerPoint. There's an example network diagram. I'd love to be able to create one. It's hard to do it on the fly when you're talking to people and still value their time, right? You don't want to see while I'm searching an icon or something like that. And then I have, I just created all this stuff really quickly based on the document you gave me. Okay. And you can see some good pieces in here. They're just not connected yet. But what I'd like to do at the end of this, tonight or tomorrow morning, is draft one up, send it back out, and I'd love to hear from you. What do we get wrong? What's missing, et cetera? And see if we can't finish this session with, okay, now we have a draft diagram, because nothing helps you understand scope better than a diagram.
I agree.
I'd have to agree, Doug. But 9 times out of 10, I haven't seen an up-to-date diagram.
That's why we just create them. And just real fast, drafty. I don't care about IP addresses. I don't care about any of that.
Exactly.
I don't care what model of the Cisco router.
Show me a logical flow.
Yeah, just a logical, exactly.
Absolutely. Love visuals to keeping it simple. Doug, our MSP Cody, he has a fire to put out, so he'll be leaving us in about 20 minutes. So if you have any more specific MSP questions you want to ask him.
Yeah, let's cover those since he'll be leaving soon. Cody, in order to help us with this assessment, we're going to need a couple of things from you as the MSP. Have you gone through any assessments? Are you FedRAMP? Do you have any other documentation, SOC 2s, anything?
So yeah, we do have SOC 2 and PCI DSS because we do process some transmit or some payment information, but we are going through the process of getting FedRAMP moderate authorized in preparation for this because a lot of our customers are going to need that. And then potentially down the road, we might just go ahead and get a level 2 certification ourselves so that we can make that process easier for our customers to get assessed. But that's in the works. I don't have any further information on timelines on when that'll be accomplished or not, but we are gathering up our evidence to go through that FedRAMP moderate assessment.
Great. So it sounds like you'll have a lot, the vocabulary that we're going to be talking about, and a lot of the information that we're going to be asking for, you'll either be working or be able to create. We'll probably ask this level of involvement, like interviews with the actual assessment as well. And we'll need a shared responsibilities matrix. Is that something you have?
We are working on that currently with Derek. That was something that he prompted with us about a month or two ago when the final rule was coming out that we needed to sit down and do that. And so we're in the process of developing that, but it is not finalized.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's all I can think of. Derek, can you think of anything else that we should cover with the ESP before we let them go?
Yes. If you can explain to Cody what are the benefits of them as an MSP in their CMMC Level 2 certification when they're supporting us and other defense contractors through their assessment based on the final rule. Are there any advantages to the MSP being certified?
Yeah, you can see this diagram. This kind of breaks it down. So you are an external service provider in the CMMC language is you guys. Now, whether or not you supply that over the cloud like OneDrive does, you could either be an ESP or a CSP. I believe you're an ESP because you seem to be active. You're using cloud services, but you also are active with the organization. So you are one of our assets, meaning you're in scope for us. So we'll be talking about that. But if you're FedRAMP certified or CMMC Level 2 certified, it helps that evaluation go a lot smoother. It doesn't take you out of scope, but it prepares all that information ahead of time.
Right. And that's one of the considerations we've taken into account with our other customers as well. We've been having these conversations with, some of my other program managers and customer success managers are having these conversations with other customers. So that prompted us to go down the FedRAMP route as an MSP so that we could have our ducks in a row and maintain this customer relationship with NordShield or NovaShield so that, we can facilitate their certification and continue their business and continue to be a provider for them so they don't have to go find somebody else that is FedRAMP moderate or equivalent.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm glad that NovaShield's working with someone who understands that. So that works very well.
We're pretty rare. There's not a lot of us out there.
Valuable member of our team. Can you give an overview for Cody in terms of the different tools they're using to manage our security protection assets, the importance of those being FedRAMP, if possible, and just how that can streamline the assessment for us? I know he asked some questions around like their RMM tool that they use and other different tools they're using internally as an MSP that is providing security protection functions for us.
Okay.
What's the benefit of any of those tools being FedRAMP moderate versus not?
So if you have security protection data, that's this row here, like you're managing our IDS for us, you're receiving logs. If that was the only thing you did, you're a security protection asset, and it gets a little bit easier for the assessment on our half. But I think because you're a full service MSP, you're always going to be having access to CUI. You can set up our accounts, your call center, your help desk. You're going to be up in that area. So I think if you were just doing some of those tools and you were only having security protection data, that would be one thing. But you do have access to CUI from our point of view.
So just to make sure I'm clear in what you're saying. So if we were just processing security protection data, we would just have to facilitate the evidence and the support through NovaShield's assessment in relation to that data, as opposed to having to go out and get a level 2 certification or a
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
That scoping is a really good piece of information for us because I thought they just had, the ability to reset our passwords, but you brought it into the right scope. So they actually, through the RM, they can reach out and touch our environment. So that makes it different.
I believe it does. Yeah. All right. I wanted to also cover any other potential service providers you had. And I just have a list to kind of start the ball rolling. But if there's other areas that you have, let us know. So website hosting. Does NovaShield, is there novashield.com out there?
Yes, use Wix. They host our website, novashield.com, and that's pretty much where we put most of our marketing material.
No sensitive CUI there?
At least not intentionally.
Yeah.
Nakia, she's our marketing manager as well. She can elaborate on just kind of the process of how she posts information on our website.
We, like Derek said, we don't think we have any CUI on there, but the way that we go through the CUI documentation, I just review our contracts and then I reach out to our government team just to confirm that if the information that they're providing us have CUI, they'll confirm that it doesn't. And then we have the government director that approves it and said that it's.
Yeah, I was going to say this can be out of scope. You'll want to have a control to make sure you're doing this properly. What you just said is perfect. There is no CUI being put on there. And if that is true, administrative controls are fine as long as you have a process in place, an administrative control. And we'll get to that when we do assessment prep. Right now, still just doing scope. The way I like to do scope is if you have no intention of getting CUI on there, whether you put a technical control or administrative control in place, then that is out of scope. It is possible sometimes people do other than intended. So I can put an administrative control and you could accidentally put it there and then have to remove it. That doesn't mean that it needs to be in scope. We'll put controls in place that does not receive that. Even though accidents happen, it's still not in scope. Yes. As long as we have procedures to handle it.
Yes.
Great.
Okay. Email providers. We've talked about online data storage. You have OneDrive. Do you have any other ways in which people can store data? Google Drives, or other things, and can we restrict that?
Yes, and Cody, before we let you go, can you speak to how you all are managing backups for us? I know we are backing data up outside of OneDrive.
Right. So I do believe what we are doing is we have a backup server in the cloud instance that is, I'm not 100% clear on how exactly we're going about that, but we are putting it in a backup server that only we have access to, so that if you are compromised, we can restore you from that backup and re-provision your accounts and everything like that. So we do have that set up within your commercial cloud and also within your GCC High. So, it's not on our personal or our enterprise servers. It's our enterprise accounts. It's in yours, but we're the only ones that have access to it.
That's a good point. Thanks for bringing that up. So Google Drive, iCloud storage, you name it. Do people have a practice of putting stuff anywhere else other than OneDrive?
We have administrative controls in place, and part of our security awareness training our employees not to do that. But we have had some incidents in the past where employees have stored contract information. We categorize as FCI, that they stored it like in their personal Dropbox or Google Drive or something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
And then just to expand on that, one of the things we do facilitate as a part of their commercial and their GCC High environment is a SharePoint environment where we do provide some administrative controls around who has access to that SharePoint environment and how that data is managed there. We have data loss prevention software that scans that.
Nice. Doug, we had some questions around our accounting system. We use QuickBooks to information on the invoice to our defense clients. Wasn't sure if that's going to be considered federal contract information or potentially CUI, including our RFPs.
In general, like if you just charge an hourly rate and it's just the level of your engineer and an hourly rate, it's typically not CUI, but we will want to look at your contract and see how that's labeled. If you have like a description of a part or something like that, maybe. But in general, if it's pretty just simple billing that's not sensitive, we can do that. Thank you, Cody.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Cody.
And I'll just to put a note, to review data in invoices.
In the contract.
Online conference apps. Do you use Zoom or Teams or anything like that?
Yes, we use primarily Teams.
Okay. Is that inside the GCC High environment?
So for our clients where we believe that we're handling export control data, we do restrict those meetings to our GCC High environment. but the majority of our meetings are conducted via Teams on the commercial side.
Okay. So that would be fine if you use those for non-CUI, but you're going to need some administrative controls to ensure that they are not.
Okay.
Yeah, we have both policy and training. So that's part of our annual training for end users as well.
Awesome. Okay. Online ticketing systems. Do you have something like that, like a ServiceNow in the cloud?
Yes, we use ServiceNow is the solution we're using for ticketing, and it's cloud based.
Okay. And the issue there is typically you don't need much in a ticket. Like Makia's account is locked up. Please help her reset it. That's fine. But sending passwords or putting any other screenshots or things like that, that would be dangerous. You can handle those through administrative controls so we can keep it out of scope. But that's just something we'll need to do.
Okay.
And could I have a follow-up question, Doug?
Yeah.
Let's say our MSP, they're using Follow the Sun support, and they have somebody in Romania doing support for us on the weekends. Are they allowed access to the GCC High environment to help us, or no?
I don't believe so, especially since you want to use it with ITAR as well. So maybe that's something we want to do a follow-up question with Cody. I don't think that should be allowed.
Okay.
I'll kick it back to, expertise of you CCPs on that, but I believe that's out, isn't it?
I agree. If you look at Microsoft GCC High, they have like a diagram that shows with GCC High that they only use U.S. support. That's really one of the distinctions. Not only is it the U.S. Data centers like GCC, but the difference is they're only using U.S. CONUS support. So yeah, it is.
You have a good point up. Microsoft says that, but what about Cody and his team, right? And I think the same needs to apply because they're managing GCC High for us. They have the same access, and I think we need to confirm.
We'll have to make sure we check the contract with Cody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a really nice follow-up there.
Absolutely.
Okay, customer relation management, Salesforce, anything like that, nothing wrong with using it. Same as the accounting system and the ticketing system and even Teams. We just don't want CUI in it. Is you guys using Salesforce or Zen or one of those things for?
Yeah, we're using Salesforce and primarily our sales team. That's what they use to respond to RFPs and a lot of our client information. We train them not to put any CUI in it, but in your experience, what type of information have you seen? Maybe some spillage, CRM systems?
They could upload portions of a statement of work. That could be an issue. That's typically what I see. Cost of a contract, who you're working with, senior engineer, regular engineer, that doesn't seem to be a big deal for me, but there could be some contract information that the government doesn't want in there.
Okay.
So that's going to be the same with online billing, online ticketing, online CRM, online anything that you use to just do your business, payroll, benefits, healthcare, right? None of this stuff should have CUI in it. It's best to list them all out for the auditor coming in and just say, hey, we have administrative controls that it just doesn't go in there. It's not intended for that purpose. We tell them not to do that. We check it once in a while, but I think it's a useful idea to just list them out. So you probably have Salesforce, you probably have a benefits portal, you likely have a payroll, anything else in there. I would just list them all out.
Okay.
Physical locations, we talked about office buildings. What about the home office we should talk about? I think it is reasonable to set up the home office in a manner that can protect CUI. You don't have to have copper coating of your walls. Really just, it's a couple of things. Your home router, anything you buy from Best Buy or whatever else, has the ability to set up 2 VLANs, and you can have one for work and one for home. That has to be set up. You can't have your teenager, who might be better at IT technology than we are, on the same LAN as you if CUI is coming across. But you can set it up so it segments it. You want a lockable office or a safe or a lockable desk, and you want a place to have conversations. You want to have your own printer. I don't think that's a very big expense. These things are like $150, right? And you want those things on its own. So I would recommend that we design a home office architecture. Pretty simple. Set up the router into 2 VLANs, have your access to the secured one and your printer to the secured one, have a place where you can work. working at the kitchen table with CUI right next to your daughter who can read it, no good. Loaning them your laptop, no good. Can't do that kind of stuff. Putting a sticky note on your laptop with your password, no good. We should come up with an acceptable use policy for home workers that just tells them, here's how you set it up. And you should have your IT personnel, which is Cody's group, help them out, right? To create a trouble ticket saying, hey, I'm trying to set up my home router according to this.
Okay. Now, Makia will probably be the one leading that activity as far as creating the acceptable use policy. You have any questions about that, Makia? Think you encounter any issues or pushback from employees?
No, I agree with them. Now, I did want to mention that our office, it is a shared area. Like we are in a building with someone else, but we do have our own space and have our HR has the office that we're sharing. Derek has his office, but we do have a CUI room where we have our printer and shredder and all these other things.
I think that works. You also mentioned that remote users work in shared office spaces, like an HQ. If they can there are private rooms there, and you have VPN, and we even talked about VDI, perhaps that can be managed, and they could do that work there as long as we set it up securely. I don't think that's something that's built yet, but it's a design or a modification that we might want to do.
Okay.
What about soft media, flash drives? Do people use USB drives or thumb drives as part of business, and can CUI be put on it?
I'll let Elvis elaborate on that. This has been a thorn in his side.
That is a big thorn. So if we have a laptop that is approved for CUI, we have administrative control and a technical control. Administratively, of course, we're training people how to manage that appropriately and label it and control it. Technically, through the RMM, we are enforcing access control and DLP settings.
Okay. Are we allowed to put a thumb drive into it and download CUI onto it?
Yes, only if it's a CUI approved laptop.
So to that point, Doug, so essentially our employees that handle CUI, they have a dedicated CUI laptop, and then our employees that we think are just handling FCI or not even involved in the government contracts, they have a separate laptop. So those employees with CUI access, they have two laptops, and that CUI laptop is what can access GCC High.
And flash drives are fine the way you described it. I would recommend work with the endpoint software to ensure that it's encrypted. You could restrict it to thumb drives that you have issued. You don't have to, but you could. Administratively, they should be labeled with a CUI on them because they're intended to hold that. And also administratively, they need to be put secured. Right. So it's okay for me to have it, on my person and secured. It's not okay for me to leave it in my car.
Right.
Okay. Hard copy media. So we did talk about printers. Printers produce paper. Where's the paper go? We'd like to see it controlled at all times. So either with someone who's securing it or locked up overnight.
Yes. So for those our employees that work, especially at co-location places, we administratively instruct them not to print or handle any physical paper CUI. But for those that work in our shared office, we have a clean desk policy. So we remove all papers and lock them in a file cabinet. And we do have control of the keys to the file cabinets. And we have a safe as well for some of like the CDs and other hard copy media.
That'll be all in the CUI office as well.
Nice.
In the CUI space. Yeah.
And Mickey, you mentioned shredders. It would be useful to get the model number of the shredder just so we can make sure, basically looking for a confetti shred. Strip shredders, believe it or not, they're still in place. We don't want one of those, but we would like it small as possible. A lot of interpretations being discussed on how small it needs to be. I prefer to take the conservative and get a P4 shredder. Those can be a bit expensive, like between $500 and $800, but it is also possible that there could be something less than that. I'd love to hear opinions from the certified people here as well, but I would recommend taking the high road on those things.
So I would suggest that we consider, adding another service. I hate to add another contract to the scope of evaluation, but just to rent a shredded box and have, that government level shredding done for us, as opposed to buying another, piece of machinery that's going to break down.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good solution there. We'll want to put a couple administrative controls around that. Just as an assessor, there's a couple of gotchas. Be careful of people who have the box tops under their desk and just, stack up the to be shredded stuff overnight or even over lunch. That's not good. So it's part of what Deech said about the clean desk policy. But it's just kind of a gotcha. Sometimes people forget about those things.
Yep. And to that point, if we're going to outsource that and use a service, just make sure we do our proper vetting and screening and then get like certificates of destruction for that service.
All right.
And that'll be something that I'll be responsible for. I'll make sure I look into that.
We talked about employees, contractors and subcontractors. Is that part of NovaShield?
Yes.
Pretty much treat them just like employees. The gotchas there are, do they have their own laptops that are not issued by you, maybe even not managed, or phones that might not be managed by you, or are they treated exactly like an employee?
Yeah, they have to have an issued laptop.
And I'd also, as an HR, if I do verify that they have a background check, and I have those individuals listed as they come in and the contractors come in, I make sure that they have background checks as well and review them.
That's awesome. Yeah, you cut me off at the pass. That's exactly where I was going next. So we treat them just like employees with laptops. If you treat them just like employees with background checks and everything else, it's smooth. If you treat them differently, there's a potential gap there.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the end of my boxes here, right? As you see, we kind of like popped around a lot of different areas and discovered a couple areas as well. What I would typically do here is take a day, draw up a draft one, or I have some clients where I've worked with where we've got a whiteboard and we're writing this stuff right up now. Did want to do that in this format, but I'm pleased to knock something out that approximates the notes I've taken and then kick it back out to you all, and we can make it part of this presentation.
Yeah, I think we could make this like a multi-part series. So pick back up where you are pretty much presenting the diagram you created based on your notes, and we'll let you know if we think it's accurate and what we need to add or remove, and kind of go from the next step.
Yeah, and the next step of the exercise is going to be with the draft documentation. Then we go back over the assets and say, okay, where is the CUI created? Where does it get stored? Where does it transmit? Is that a secure transmission? But we have something to talk to.
We're working from a premise of establishing scope and then following data flow or mapping the data flow. Is that right? Kind of the logic you're using?
That's exactly it, yeah. So I'm kind of showing on my screen here, this is maybe, if you were a really good drawer, what your whiteboard might look like. You do something like this, or if you have to take it back to the office, you can do little icons and stuff, and you might get something like this. Would be nice.
Great. Well, I think we're off to a good start, Doug. I'm confident that NovaShield has brought in the right person for the job. We are excited to be leading us to the promised land, getting that CMMC Level 2 certification. Typically for our team, this time works on Thursday, same time. So if you want us to lock it in for next week at this time, we can pick back up, see what you come up with, and go from there.
That worked great for me. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, that was fun. Thanks, Doug.
If you receive value from this episode, I invite you to subscribe and like so that you're the first to know when we release new episodes. Also, check out cmmcproof.com to learn more about the arsenal of resources that we provide to equip you to conquer CMMC. We'll see you next time.